Hi, so it's Dr. Fox, licensed psychologist in the state of Texas, and today we're going to talk about opportunity versus concern. And these are situations for those that are along the BPD spectrum to take advantage of opportunities that may help you increase your sense of self-awareness, increase your sense of self-control, as well as to increase your awareness of concerns that may come up, of issues that may come up that encourage maladaptive patterns that take away from gains that you may be making in regards to self-control, in regards to you moving forward and managing not only how you feel about yourself, but how you see yourself and you see your world. So let's get into it. And please like, share, and subscribe. And here we go. Now, the first opportunity is going to be remissions. And it's important to realize that over the course of time, about 80% of individuals that are along the BPD spectrum experience what are called remissions. These are remissions of symptoms. And what this means is that those symptoms decrease to a level where you have that sense of self-control, where you have the ability to manage how you feel about yourself. You're able to maintain employment. You're able to maintain relationships fairly well, right? And you're able to get through it. And in some cases of remission, these individuals have not had any significant BPD symptoms for 2 years or more. So the opportunity is when these remissions come about, that's when we want to focus on building our sense of adaptive strategies, encouraging these sense of adaptive strategies, and continuing to make good choices that increase the probability of positive outcome. Now, our first concern is resurgences. Now, resurgences are going to happen, right? And they may not necessarily be resurgence of symptoms from remissions. What they may be is resurgence of old maladaptive patterns. Is it as you've learned adaptive strategies, as you've learned more effective strategies, that then you're able to go forward, but you have these resurgences. Something happens, there's an acute stressor, maybe something else has caused you to then regress to a previous pattern of behavior that tends to be maladaptive. It's these resurgences, and these resurgences are going to happen. It doesn't mean that you go all the way back to the beginning. Actually, what resurgences mean is that we have to then refocus our attention on those issues that are coming about. How do we manage those issues that have come about? And then, right, what adaptive strategies can we put in place to decrease the probability of these resurgences occurring again? And even though resurgences are part of the process, when they reoccur, they tend to be for shorter amounts of time and less intensity. So even though it's an area of concern that resurgences happen, still, it's a positive, it's a plus, because it becomes less intense, and for a shorter amount of time, the more you use those adaptive strategies. So our next opportunity is self-compassion. And I think that self-compassion is an opportunity, right, for us to appreciate where we are, even if there's that little voice, that family in the head, right, that tells us terrible things about ourselves, and that, these horrible things. I think we need to exercise self-compassion. Exercising self-compassion not only allows us to feel emboldened with positivity at times, right, but that self-compassion allows us to get used to that feeling. And when we can create it in ourselves on a long-term basis, I think what happens is then we become more receptive over time of getting it from others, of compassion towards you from others. If you have, let's say, the opposite of that, which is a lot of self-contempt, and then you hope that everything will be okay because someone else will make it okay, like in those relationships, I think it's really hard to recognize it. It gets really hard to see it, because I think we have to start with ourselves. We have to allow ourselves to be compassionate with ourselves, and we have to allow people to be compassionate to us. I don't think we can first say, well, I'll allow other people to be compassionate with me, and then I'll be compassionate with myself. I just haven't seen it work that way. It'd be great if it did, but I just haven't seen it work that way. Our next area of concern is emotional triggers and buttons. Now, this is going to happen, right? But we have to know what our emotional buttons and triggers are. Triggers are those things that happen, right, that really activate you and get you set off, maybe frustrate you and you become angry and stuff like that. Emotional buttons are deeper. Emotional buttons, I talk about it in my workbook about how important it is to recognize our emotional buttons. Emotional buttons are deeper. These are things that bring up feelings and experiences that we've had in the past, and that they're intense, and they bring up this massive, let's just say, tsunami of emotions and feelings, and sometimes images of really negative past experiences. And I think if we're not aware of our emotional buttons and triggers, we can get lost in them. And then we do tend to get stuck in our maladaptive response patterns that are highly destructive. So we have to be aware of our emotional buttons and our triggers so that we can control them and what sets them off, so we can use adaptive strategies. So our next opportunity for growth is insight. Building insight is so critical to growth and doing things differently. Insight encourages growth. We have to have insight into how we feel about ourselves, how we see ourselves, and they has to be realistic. We don't want to be skewed, right, with what we're going to talk about, that BPD lens in just a second, but we want our insight to be based on objective facts with as much objectivity as we can. And I know that that's really tough. We have to have insight into ourselves. We have to understand the symptoms that are present and understand that for every symptom, there are reasons. And what are the reasons for those things? And it's that insight that helps us move forward and develop adaptive strategies that can help us do things differently. We must utilize insight to help us grow. Insight does not equate to change. It doesn't. Insight encourages change through behavioral change, as well as thinking differently, doing things differently, and utilizing adaptive strategies that help us live our life differently. Now, our next concern is that BPD lens. Now, I talk about BPD lens in my workbook, and I think that BPD lens is something we have to address. If you have BPD or you're along that BPD spectrum, we have to recognize that your BPD lens is in place and that it distorts not only how you see yourself, but how you see others, how you see the world, how you see your future. It distorts it towards the negative. We have to have a more authentic view of ourselves, an authentic view of relationships, expectations, and how we see others. This BPD lens, the more we get caught up in it, the greater the probability of negative outcome and falling back to those old maladaptive patterns that are so destructive. And that's why it's such a big concern, in that it takes away from your ability to grasp those opportunities of remissions, of self-compassion and insight so that you can create change. That BPD lens, we have to wear it away and build ourselves an authentic view, an objective view. And it takes time and it takes practice, but you can totally do it. You can absolutely do it. Now, our next opportunity is willingness. We have to have a willingness to change. We have to have a willingness to accept adaptive strategies. We have to have a willingness to grow beyond it. It's more than just saying, yeah, I want to do things differently. It has to be that we are incorporating the strategies that we're learning in treatment, in your workbooks, in your opportunities, in your experiences, and incorporating them going forward. And it's using this willingness to be open to change and doing things in an adaptive and healthy way, and outgrowing those maladaptive patterns that keep you locked in your BPD, maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. And it's building insight, right? It's building that self-compassion and encouraging those remissions, and it's the willingness to do these things and grasp these opportunities that will help you go forward. And our last concern is the other side of willingness, which is willfulness. Willfulness is that refusal to accept change, that dogmatic intensity, right? That I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, which tends to be maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that are self-destructive and destructive of relationships, and things are going to be different. You are going to give in to my way of my expectation, of the way that I anticipate doing things, the way things are going to go. Because willfully, I am not going to change. I'm going to continue to do these things, and stop telling me how to do things differently, because my way is the only way, and I'm refusing to do things differently. It's that willfulness. And that willfulness is that intractability and that just being wedded to those maladaptive patterns that keep you stuck. And the problem is that willfulness encourages your BPD lens, which adds to the sensitivity of our emotional buttons and our triggers, and it increases not only the length of resurgences, but also the intensity of them. And all of these things are related. These opportunities are opportunities for growth. Please continue to focus on them, identify them, and build them, and so that you can lessen your areas of concern and continue your area of growth. And I hope that you found this video helpful. If you like the format and the style, please let me know. I would love to do more of these. That's always fun to mix it up a little bit. And please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you very much for your time and attention. Be well and take care. Bye-bye.